going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Trey Codes. As always, my name is Trey Hope, and today we'll be going over another Flutter package. This one is good for databases, and it's called Hive, specifically version 2.0.4. Now, Hive is essentially a NoSQL database that's very lightweight and manageable, and it's very easy to set up and highly recommended when you need some type of local data storage on your phone. So let's say you have shared preferences, like saving a user's choice of dark mode in the app or user profile information. Anything where you don't necessarily need to go to the server to fetch some data, Hive is probably a good implementation for your app. So let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so as always, whenever we're dealing with Flutter packages, we have to, of course, download the dependencies first. And we're going to be dealing with a few different ones here for today. The first one that we need to download is Hive, which is on version 2.04. This is going to give us everything we need to do to actually deal with the boxes or database table, so to speak, for the implementation of the package. There's also this thing called Hive Flutter. This is version 1.1.0, and this will provide us with the listener. That way we don't have to restart the page ourselves when we have new data in our table. Instead, we can use something that's called a listener that will allow us to automatically update our UI when the data changes. Then we also have a Hive generator package on version 1.1.1, and this is going to allow us to create our own objects to put into the database. So by default, Hive takes in primitive types like strings, ints, things like that, but you can also create your own classes to use for your database table. So if we want to insert a user object or a customer object or order object, we will use a generator to create that file for us. So we'll need to download these three for our basic dependencies, but then for our dev dependencies, we'll also need a package called build runner. And this is going to be used in conjunction with the Hive generator. That way we can generate the file that we need to represent our class model. So we'll download those and then we'll jump into the next step of the process. The next step is for us to create our person object that we'll be using for our Hive database table. So essentially, this is just a basic model. We have a person model here, as you can see, but we have a few annotations here that kind of specify that this is a Hive object. So as you can see here, we have this annotation that says Hive type, and then we pass in a type ID. So this is going to specify which Hive object that we're dealing with for our app. You have to choose a number between 0 and 223. So I assume that means you can have no more than 224 different Hive objects, but ideally you wouldn't need more than that anyways. So then you just have, your normal setup, a class person, but you want to extend it from a Hive object. And then from there, you'll want to just pass in our constructor. We have a name, age, and gender, and this is going to be a string, int, and a string, as you can see here. And then from there, you also want to have the annotations Hive field with a number that specifies which column that we'll be working with. So as you can see here, the name field is going to be column 1 essentially, age column, name is column 0, age column 1, gender column 2. So that's basically all you need to do. Also keep in mind that you see this right here that says person underscore model.g.dart. You want to add this in here. It's going to be the name of the file you're currently in, which is person underscore model, but then you'll add .g and .dart. So from there, we're going to use our build runner package and run a command that's going to generate our adapter based off this object we created. So open up your terminal. At the base of the project, you want to run the command Flutter packages pub run build underscore runner build. And what this is going to do is actually going to generate the file we need. It's going to generate an adapter that we're going to register in our main.dart file next. So we'll let this run. And as you can see here, right now we just have person underscore model.dart. But once this is done, we should have our person underscore model.g.dart. And now, as you can see here, that model has now created the adapter that we need to register in our main.dart file. So this is essentially all you have to do on the model side. We'll go ahead and jump into how to initialize Hive in the next video. So now what we need to do is we need to actually initialize Flutter and kind of get the basic setup out of the way before we actually start messing with the database. So right here, I have two global variables, and they're going to represent the names of the tables we'll be working with. There's going to be one table that takes in key value pairs, and I'll call that table Hivebox KVP, and another table that will take in the person object that we generated earlier, and I'll call that Hivebox people. From there, we then want to initialize Flutter, so we'll call await hive.init Flutter. It's a good idea to do this here. That way, by the time we go into our demo page, Hive is already initialized. Then we need to register the person adapter by calling hive.register adapter and pass in that person adapter. If you do not do this, then you cannot insert the person object that we modeled earlier. So make sure that you don't skip this step if you're going to be creating your own custom objects to be putting into your tables. Finally, we just need to open the boxes so we can actually interact with the database. If you don't do this step, then you'll get an error saying the box hasn't been opened. So make sure that you call await hive.openBox dynamic and then the name of that table. One thing to point out here is I have this dynamic data type right here, and that's because my tables can have different data types. So if you know, for instance, that a table will have all ints, then you can just put int right here. Or if you know it'll be of all types people, which essentially this one would be, but I just kept it dynamic, you will just put that person object right here. So this is all you need to do to set it up in the main.dart file. Now let's actually jump into working with the database. So now we're ready to actually start inserting data into our boxes. So in order to do that, I have a basic UI here. I created a few different text editing controllers, and this is how we'll capture the input to be putting into our tables. So I have a key value controller that's going to be taking a key value pair to put into our key value box, and then a name, age, and gender controller to represent person information to put into our people table. Down here, I have our boxes, the key value box and the people box, respectively. And we initialize those by calling hive.box dynamic and then specify the name of the box. We have our function here called put, and that is going to take in the key value pair that we specify and place it into our key value box. And we give it a future, make it of type future. That way we can await it and then take some action afterwards. That way we can ensure the data has been inserted before we do anything else. We also have an add function that's going to take in a dynamic value, which is going to be the person object, and we add it to our people box. This one is going to return an int because with the people box, we're going to have an auto increment key. So the difference between these two functions is the key value pair, we specify the key, but with the people box, the key is auto incremented. So if we insert a person, we get a key of 0, and then we get a key of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and all the way up. So then we have just some basic functions to clear the fields after we inserted the data, or if we click the buttons to clear the fields manually. And then we just have some basic UI here, nothing too major. We have the buttons that's going to call that put function. So we're going to make sure that the key controller and the value controller are not empty, and then we'll add the data and then clear the fields. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we have the Hive Flutter package that gives us this function right here called value listenable builder. And this is how we're going to listen to the data of our specific boxes. So as you can see here, it says value listenable. We're just going to add a listenable call after our key value box. So whenever anything happens to our key value box, if we delete, if we add, if we clear, it's automatically going to update this view right here. So as you can see here, if the box isn't empty, we'll convert our box to a map. And then from there, we'll just display a normal data table, a basic widget provided by Flutter. And we're going to have our key value column. And then we're going to loop over every entry in our table and map it to those rows. So we're going to have the key is going to be the key of that entry, and then the value is going to be the value of that entry, and so on and so on. We'll also have a delete function for every row. That way we can delete the row versus clearing the whole data table. And essentially we're going to do the same thing for the person table. Same UI, similar functions. We call that add function. We clear the person fields. We make sure that those fields are not empty. And then we call the same type of listener, but we'll specify it for the people box. So that's the same, pretty much the basic setup for both tables. And then down here, I just have 2 extra buttons that's going to clear the key value box as well as the people box if we choose to do so. So this is the basic UI setup. Let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so as you can see here, we have our key value inputs, save button, and then our name, age, and gender inputs with the save button and our 2 buttons to clear our tables. So let's go ahead and add our first key value pair. So we'll just pass in a key, we'll just call this color, and then give it blue, save it. All right, so now in our key value box, we have the key color and the value blue. Let's add another one. We'll call this one message, hello there, whoops. Save that, and one more. Let's call this email. All right, so I know the UI is a little wacky right now because it's going off the screen, but this is essentially what our map looks like right now. So if we decide to delete one, we can just hit the delete button, it'll delete that row. Or if we want to clear the whole table, we'll just hit clear key value. Now our whole table is clear again. Now let's work with the people table. So the people table is going to be working with an auto incremented key and the person object. So we'll add a name, an age, and a gender. All right, so you see the first key is 0 and the person information is whatever I specify. So I just wanted to put the name, age, and gender. So let's add another one. Jessica, 24, female. All right, as you can see, the key is going to keep going up. Now, if we delete these rows and then add another person, let's say Jeff, who's 40 and a male, the key is going to be whatever the last one was incremented, so it's going to be 2. If you want to start it over completely, you have to completely clear the people table. So we'll hit clear people. Now when we go to add another person, let's see, 23, our key has started over back to 0. So this is how you work with Hive. I think it's very beneficial. I can see it being used for things, whenever you need to have just some persistent data locally that you don't necessarily need a huge database or a huge relational database like SQL or anything like that. So I highly recommend it and you should definitely check it out. All right, so hopefully this video was helpful for you and you're able to now set up Hive for your apps. Hopefully I gave enough information to where you can start to get the understanding of how to work with boxes and generating your adapters and things like that. So if this was helpful for you, as always, like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to let me know any other videos that you would like me to cover in the future. Until next time, have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.